The score from Rings of Power is pure magic. Bear McCreary truly delivered one of the greatest scores in recent years, and I just had to analyze it and learn from his mastery. So I went searching, and it turns out finding an official score even to purchase is nearly impossible. Luckily, I found this orchestral score on MuseScore of an interpretation of this piece, and I was able to use that to analyze it. Yeah, needs some work. So I set off on trying to take that score from sounding like this to make it sound like this. So right at the start, I already noticed some weird notes, not exactly sounding like how it did in the piece. So I went in and fixed those to sound like this. So another thing I noticed was that a lot of the chords were off. He had the basic melody down and maybe one of the notes from the chords that are overlaying the whole piece, but a lot of the chords weren't completely fleshed out. So it took a bit of time, and I figured that part out as well. And the biggest problem area is the massive crescendo towards the climax of the piece. Here's what MuseScore had. So it doesn't sound too off, but it doesn't sound right. It sounds very harsh. It kind of sounds like it's just plain chords and it's not leading to a specific direction. So let's get into the actual chords and see what I did different to make it sound like it does in the actual track. So here's that piano sketch for what we just played. This last chord at the end is supposed to be an F minor. Now, you hear that clear as day in the track, and that's kind of the resolution of this dissonant build-up from the choir and orchestra swelling to this climax of the piece. And it's supposed to land on that F minor. And this piece, I mean, this chord here, I mean, I don't even know what that means. So, see, like what I would want to do with this is move this up to that C, move this down to F, and already this is probably already so much better. The track has this melody with the sopranos from the choir that sounds a little bit like this. And this is doing that, kind of. It has these upper notes above it, which you don't really hear. The highest thing you hear in the track is this melody. And each one is leading to that final F. And all the supporting notes within it are leading notes just up and down just a little bit to get to that supporting chord of F minor. It's just a straight F, A flat, C. And the bass is also building upwards and then kind of like swoops into the F minor at the very end as well, where this is kind of looking like it's trickling down. It's which is not very impactful. So let's look at what I did. So we have that chord at the top. Landing on that F. We have the supporting ninth up there at the top. And we have the bass starting on that F sharp. Swooping into that final F minor. So let's hear this all together. And you can see this cone shape building from the top of the phrase all the way down to that final F minor. And I think that's accomplishing that sound that we're getting in the actual track. So for my library, I'm using sounds from Spitfire, East West, and I'm also using the Storm Drum 3 package, which has a lot of great big drum sounds, which is perfect, especially for a track like this. And finally, from Tap Space, this is an old one, but it's never let me down. I think the sounds are very good, even in the outdated fashion that it's in. It will say that it lacks mic positions. It lacks a few of the new modern capabilities that plugins have nowadays, but that is Virtual Drumline 2.5. All of its percussion, it's tuned percussion, timpani, marimba, xylophone, vibraphone. I don't know, Virtual Drumline is my go-to, and they load fairly quick, so it doesn't take too much bandwidth on my computer, and I can kind of make it do what I need it to do using reverbs, mixing techniques, and things like that. So, all right. So one of the things that the MuseScore piece was completely missing was these low bass notes. And I accomplished this sound by using the low strings package, put it on spiccato, and then I added this essentially a low pass filter here with the EQ and kind of boosted the low end to really get this thumping, not even thumping, to get this humming hollow sound, almost like the strings were being played through a big tunnel, to try to accomplish that same sound that was being played in the actual piece. So let's just hear that. We added a little bit of tremolo with the cello. And the choir again in the in the MuseScore version, the chords were just not, they weren't really there. They were kind of just doing one note for the soprano, and then the alto would add in an extra note, but it wasn't playing these full chords that you're hearing in the track. So let's just hear the choir by himself so you can hear what's happening here as well. Great. So in this next section, because there was so much automation happening, the strings really pick up here, and we actually later will have some automation within the tempo. I actually had to commit the brass to an audio file, and it's just saving me some space to let me hear the section without having to constantly run the MIDI and rub the plugin and everything like that, and it would just save some RAM on my computer. I'm only using French horns for this piece. There might be some more brass in the actual track, but from everything I was hearing, and every time I tried to add more, maybe trumpets, tuba, low brass, whatever it might be, it sounded too much. So I would be very interested to see exactly what brass is used in the track and how they're used, because I really don't hear a lot. I hear a lot of woodwinds, I hear a lot of strings, I hear the choir, and then I hear the French horns. That's pretty much it. So let's hear this next section, and we're gonna get into my automations in a little bit. Right now, I want to focus on the actual orchestration part of it, but I'm gonna tap into one of my expressive tempo sets so you can actually get a feel for what's happening with this brass piece here, and we'll get into that in a bit. In this next section, we have the flute coming in. I have that doubled with the flute and the piccolo flute, and they are complementing each other. The flutes have the main harmony, while the piccolo flute have the upper harmony above it, as well as the expressions that the modulation and that real sounding like a real flute to make it pop. So let's hear that with the flute. And we start introducing some percussion. So I'm gonna let you give you a chance to hear the virtual drum line, do its thing. So the percussion will be red. Great. And now we're coming up to this next section here, which is what we focused on the pianos. And you're really going to hear the difference as to what was played in that preview at the beginning of this video. To now. So let's hear this breakdown to the final climax. So let's hear just the percussion here. Great. So one thing you want to keep in mind when you're orchestrating really any instrument is really try to get an understanding of how the instruments work. And a lot of times I see people composing pieces for timpani that would be substantially difficult unless they have 6 or 7 timpani drums, which is not standard. Most of the time they'll have 4. I've seen 5, but 4 is pretty much standard. Especially a very skilled timpani player can make minor adjustments on the pedal to change the pitch of the drum. But some people push it way too much where they're doing scales and things like that. So make sure, you know, when you're doing this, you're doing it within a reasonable amount of playability. Now, in this instance, I'm copying a score that was already done, but if I was writing my own piece, you'd want to make sure that you're staying within the realm of possibility. So let's just hear the timpani to get an example of some of this. All right, so the last step and the most crucial part in making any orchestration sound real and sound authentic is automation. Now, the sections I just played with you do have automation in them, but now that I'm going to show you the automation, I want you to kind of pay attention to that and see how big of a difference that makes. We will go back to the beginning here because you're going to see that the choir is going up and down, up and down. Each individual track is doing it, and then I have the overall bus that they're all mapped to doing it as well to really emphasize that push and release of each chord. I mentioned my tempo sets earlier. This is actually something new that I've been utilizing, and it's incredible, and I wished I've used it on other pieces before. But I have a straight tempo set, which is basically most of the track is floating around this 90 BPM part. I knew this section here was going to kind of increase and get a little bit faster, so I have that go faster here. But once I'm ready to start expressing my pieces, I have this new set, and I can quickly switch to this, and everything, since it's MIDI except for these few audio tracks, adjust with it. And this is really how you're going to make it sound like an orchestra that's being composed. If you guys got to this point of the video, I'm glad you watched. I hope you got something out of it. I did do the score for a short film last year called The Lucid Cure. It is shot beautifully, and I had the privilege of scoring it for Brett Helms. And I'll leave a link to that in the description below and a tag to it above. I have another one coming down the pike soon, and it'll be tied into a certain movie that's coming out in a couple weeks. So hit the like button and subscribe below, and let me know if you want to see anything else. Without further ado, here is Galadriel.
It's like I'm insane now. In this pain I lash out. If this is all I am now, then